Hey there, Shortcuts. This is Stephen here with video 1 for the price list this week. Now, this is a special week, and this will be the final list I do for 4 weeks. And so I have been saving up a bunch of really special genre records for this list. So I'm going to show you those. The second list will be something special. As many of you know, I have my record fair coming up next week. I have a crate of really, really interesting records, and I'm going to give all of you first crack at those before they make it to the record fair. So I'm going to send you in the email a list, and I'm going to go through some of what's there very soon. But first, this genre list. For those of you who are not on the price list, it goes out sharp 9 p.m. every Wednesday, Sydney time. If you would like to be on the price list, drop me an email at shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. Okay, now this genre list, I'm giving you fair warning, is pretty spectacular. And so I had to go out on a bang since I won't be speaking to you for a while. So I'm kicking off with a record I've never had as a kickoff record, even though it is one of the canonical greats of jazz. And it is this. This is John Coltrane's Blue Train. Now, before we go on, I'm going to draw your attention to this press. Can you see that it says there, Alfred Lion? This was the Japanese special press of Blue Train that commemorated the 100th anniversary of Alfred Lion, who was the founder of Blue Note. This was their way of kind of recognizing his greatness. This pressing is staggeringly good. I'm just going to start there. It is in perfect condition. The folks in Shinjuku have told me that this is unplayed. The notes are perfect. The obi is perfect. I'm just going to show you the vinyl. It is heavyweight vinyl with the raised lip and powder of the original, in the style of the original 57 release. And it is absolutely perfect. Now, with that out of the way, why is this record so utterly great? By 1957, John Coltrane had been through Miles Davis's band. They'd been workshopping pretty hard, and he was briefly granted the keys to the Blue Note Kingdom. And this was his lone Blue Note leader date. And in order to make this what he wanted, he handpicked, I suppose, what you would call a front line that he fundamentally admired. So you have Lee Morgan on trumpet, Curtis Fuller on trombone, who, by the way, I think is potentially the star of the show. They were set up in Rudy Van Gelder's Hackensack studio, as is always the way, with Kenny Drew, Paul Chambers, Philly Joe Jones, one of the greatest, backing bands that's ever been. And this particular session was produced by Alfred Lion, which I suppose is part of the reason why it was lauded in this way. They had this vision, this idea of sheets of sound. There's some books that really describe this aesthetic, and they unleashed it perfectly with this album. It is architected by a genius. The title track is just such a cool vamp. There's this trend on the record of really long instrumental arcs. The solos are given such an amazing opportunity to breathe. That isn't to say that there aren't, galloping, modulating tracks. You've got Moments Notice that fills, it's almost athletic. It's just, and it's so mathematical as well. Locomotion has an incredible riff, is one of the most joyous jazz tracks ever. I'm Old Fashioned is a ballad that's as good as any. Every solo lands, every arrangement breathes. This pressing just worships this record. I suppose Blue Train is always in your mind when someone might say, "Why does jazz matter?" I suppose it is, but don't don't let that don't let you think that that means that it's kind of stiff. It's not. It's really, it's really vibrant. It was someone who was just, I suppose, just declaring their genius to the world, as Oscar Wilde was fond of saying. Yeah, just brilliant. I'm really, if any of you out there are Blue Train fans, I'd love to hear more as to why this record works. Considering it was his first time as a Blue Note leader, it's just so crazy. Imagine being the first time as a Blue Note leader, and you get to choose Lee Morgan and Curtis Fuller, who were bigger stars than him. Like, there's no question. It is absolutely crazy. Everyone knew who Coltrane was and what he would go into. I'm convinced of it. How do you follow that? Well, I think you follow that with one of the greatest soul albums of all time. And I'm talking about Tell Mama by Etta James. Now, this is the PLP 805 pressing on the Black Chest label. This is the exact pressing I have, albeit I have an extra copy of this now because I have a mono version of Tell Mama in the cadet box that Vinyl Please made. Now, there are all the notes. There's these lovely notes by Maury Roth on the back. I think the thing about this record is that it's got 12 songs, and every single one of them sounds like a standard. Sounds like they've just become, you know, um, little nuggets that just lived and breathed after this record. I mean, I think it was called Fame Studios. The producer was, I'm sure it was Rick Hall, who I don't know that much about. Yeah, recording engineer Rick Hall. August to November 1967 at Fame Studios, Muscle Shoals, Alabama. I'm quite happy with my memory there. This is where soul and gospel collide, even more so in some ways than Aretha Franklin. And I think that's partly because of the Muscle Shoals band, where the brass is really kind of stabbing, and you get tracks like I'd Rather Go Blind. The rhythm section were nicknamed the Swampers, and I think they're a little bit more groovy than the band who was backing Aretha in the day. It's a beautiful pressing. I love it. Half a century on, artists as diverse as Kendrick Lamar, Beyonce, they all live to some extent in Etta's shadow. And even Kendrick Lamar's latest album, I hear little snippets that remind me of this record. It's so great. I cannot recommend it highly enough. All right. Next on this stellar genre list is Playboys by Chet Baker and Art Pepper. Look at that sleeve. That is genuinely great in a weird, I don't know what the right adjective is. There's the band on the back. Now, what you've got here is Carl Perkins on piano, Curtis Counts, Lawrence Marable, Phil Urso, Chet Baker, Art Pepper on alto sax. An incredible band. Like 1956. This is basically West Coast royalty. I mean, for a sextet, though, it's quite a compact recording. Interestingly, this has one of my personal favorite kind of 50s hard bop songs, and it is the second track called Minor Yours, which was actually written by Art Pepper. Jimmy Heath, who I think there's another alternative sleeve to this record that mentions Jimmy Heath. But he wrote a lot of the material. But my favorite is the Art Pepper track, Minor Yours. The way the instruments all come together and the way the solos devolve, it just makes me smile every single time. It really swings. It's quite unhurried. It's quite different to the Blue Train. It's on the Black Pacific Jazz label, as Chet Baker was locked into that label at the time. I think it's an interesting counterpoint to the East Coast hard bop, which means that for me it's a little bit deeper, a little bit more chewy. There's a bit more going on. Maybe the scene was a bit smaller on the West Coast, but this one I really love it. I think it's a really cool record, and that sleeve is just outrageously good. Okay, I've been sitting on this one for a while, and I think that there will be a few of you, I hope, who will investigate this record and fall in love with it the way that I have. This is a UK press of Sir Joe Quarterman and Free Soul. And here's the back of it. Now, we've had jazz, we had some bop, we've had some soul. Now we fall squarely into funk. This is a band that came out of Washington, D.C. The 70s funk ecosystem kind of in full throttle here. So church-trained singers, brass-heavy arrangements, tight, disciplined, kind of James Brown-esque backing band. They became a kind of a bit of a pulse in DC. They didn't really go, as far as some others, and I'm actually not sure how many records they made. There may have just been one, but Free Soul is worth every second. It is sharp. It is streetwise. The horns are crazy. The vocals don't really remind me of Curtis Mayfield, but the grooves do. And like all great funk albums, the center of gravity is the rhythm section. These super clipped guitars, snare on the beat, bass lines that have been lifted left, right, and center. But there is one standout track, and it is the opening track, this one here. I got so much trouble in my mind. This thing has been sampled in a lot of places, and what I like about it is that the break beats are pretty great, but it does have a social conscience as well. It's just great. It's just, I suppose, I don't know. I think this might be their only album. But what an only album to have. Like, undue influence. DJs just love this thing. These UK presses are not as quiet as Japanese, but they're super bassy, really dry cut as well. For those of you who love your funk, you're going to enjoy that. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about some dub. And I got a pretty special one to show you here. For those of you who are into dub, I have a collection of Canadian releases from the 90s that are pretty great. I've got about 4 or 5. If any of you want to see some more of those before the record fair, just let me know. The one I've selected to showcase here is this. Clock Tower presents Augustus Pablo Yard Style Melodica Songs. Now, this is a double LP, and it includes the really rare poster. So I'm just going to show you the poster. You guys know how much I love posters. Look at this. How cool is that? Now, that's not the only thing that was interesting about this Canadian series, and the reason I bought so many of them. A, they sound incredible, but B, they were all pressed on really interesting color variants. In this case, it's like a gray marble. And, just a beautiful, beautiful thing. So, Horace Swaby, as he was called, Augustus, Pablo. I mean, he turned the humble melodic for a while in the 70s into the coolest instrument in the world, and almost one of the most haunting kind of lead voice in a genre sounds. He emerged from the whole Kingston rocker scene with King Tubby. King Tubby being kind of like the godfather behind this scene. Quite a meditative dub album, a little bit more minor key, really stretched out, very, very trippy. I was playing some of it. I've been playing a lot of dub over the last year or so, and my son Finbar is not convinced, but there is that space and that echo, of course. This isn't so much a studio album as, think of it like a curated slice of the dub world, and I think of it like the instrumentals all coming together like I'm on a drive that's going through the night. It's just really fun. It feels a little bit kind of prophetic as well. There's an end of the world feel to really like top quality trip hop and dub, and I think this one really fits the bill. Really playable, great quality vinyl, and a different sleeve to the UK variants. But I always thought, as I said, I bought maybe 10 of these Canadian versions because I just love how they sound, and so really collectible, really fun. All right, my first white label promo of the night, and it is the wonderfully titled "Feeling Bitchy" by Millie Jackson. Friend of shortcuts, we love Millie here. There she is on the back. Another kind of typical 70s tour de force. Fearless, rude, definitely a bit smutty. The band can shift from velvet to grime in a heartbeat. Has another one of her, I guess, signature long form monologues that then expand into these classic Southern soul grooves. We maybe know her best from Caught Up and Still Caught Up and her incredible debut. But Feeling Bitchy is another almost concept album. It still reads as confessional R&B. It's very funny, really sensual and sexual, great storytelling. Yeah, I'm a big fan. And you all know already how much I love Millie. And also Nina. So the Japanese just adored Nina Simone. And they made the best compilations. So in this case, it's one of these compilations where the lyric sheet is like an internal magazine. There's a great photo of her just there. How cool is that? With the obi, an early one because you can see everything's still in Japanese. But what you get with this particular record is one of the best compilations of this classic period. So I Put a Spell on You, Take Care of Business, Sea Line Woman, Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood, amazing song, Trouble in Mind, How Can I, The Last Rose of Summer, one of my favorites, Nobody Knows You When You're Down and Out, If You Go Away. It's just fantastic. And another one of these hard cardboard gatefolds with the obi Lovely, lovely, beautiful, beautiful thing. Um, and unique to Japan. You cannot get that anywhere else. Yeah, anyway, let's get on. So there's still some cool records to come. We have George Benson's The Other Side of Abbey Road. So this is cut in late 1969, early 1970, produced by Creed Taylor. I'm not sure how many he made with Creed Taylor, but Creed Taylor has a lovely kind of velvety sound. And an arranger called Don Sebesky. And basically, they just reimagined the Beatles' Swan Song LP. Golden Slumbers, You Never Give Me Your Money, Because, Come Together, Oh Darling, Here Comes the Sun, Something Octopus's Garden, and remarkably, The End. And it's probably the best track on here. It really glides. It's really groovy. For those of you who are Beatles fans, you'll find this record a complete trip. So who do we got? George Benson. Oh, I meant to say, a certain Herbie Hancock on piano and organ and harpsichord in this particular record. Ron Carter on bass, and the mighty Idris Muhammad on drums. The Other Side of Abbey Road by George Benson. How cool is that? Oh, man. And what an audacious move, by the way. The Beatles had only just released the album, and then he produces his kind of jazz crossover version. Talking about jazz crossover, this is one of my favorite records on the list. This is the Herbie Hancock soundtrack to Round Midnight. What a great sleeve. Dexter Gordon, Freddie Hubbard, Cedar Walton, again, Herbie Hancock as well, of course. So the story here was that Bernard Tavernier's 1969 movie lent itself to a late night jazz feel, that after hours stuck in a bar kind of view. So the palette here is kind of hushed and lyrical, smoky. You kind of get the sense the cues of the movie kind of playing out pretty low key. What was really cool about this is it went on to win the best original score at the Oscars in 1970, which was unusual and still is for jazz kind of rooted soundtracks. Love this pressing. It works as a soundtrack, but also works as a standalone record. Well worth it. It really sounds like someone's in a room, and this is the other kind of soundtrack oriented record that has a great standalone property too. This is Sorcerer by Tangerine Dream. Could there be a more different movie to Around Midnight? Yeah, that's true. But Tangerine Dream kind of perfected that Berlin style electronica. But Sorcerer with William Friedkin, who made The Exorcist, of course, he pushed them into cinema and kind of pushed their sound in a few different directions. He asked them for more long atmospheric cues. Of course, Edgar Froese is part of this band, Christopher Franke, Peter Baumann, and they responded with more kind of metallic percussion and a really kind of deep sound. It's very pulsing and foreboding, which again completely suits the kind of more ominous nature of the movie. By the way, Sorcerer, I think, is one of the unsung movies of the 70s. It is really, really good. The movie initially completely underperformed, and part of the reason was it was released around about the same time as Star Wars. But the score gained a second life. It became really, really famous. Composers cited it as one of the first, what they would call modern soundtracks, with kind of krautrock minimalism married to that kind of Hollywood narrative. It's really interesting. Really good, and I think the movie has a second life now, just like the soundtrack. All right, my second white label promo is just another artist that I love. There's the Probe white label as opposed to Pink, and it is Otis Spann. The blues is where it's at. I think Otis Spann is just basically an unsung hero. This is a series of late night confessions, songs like Popcorn Man, which I think is one of my favorite blues songs of the 70s. Ain't Nobody's Business. It's sassy. I don't know. I think it sounds more authentic. A lot of the 70s blues started by this point to feel a little bit polished, and I don't think this is the case. It's a sleeper classic. Chicago blues. I love Chicago blues. In fact, there's a song inside two, Nobody Knows Chicago Like I Do, which I think is great. I'm going to just very quickly call out a couple more blues albums. I've got a really nice copy of Mike Bloomfield, Al Cooper, and Stephen Stills' Super Session for the original Japanese quadraphonic, which is the copy of this that I have. Worth it for Albert's Shuffle alone, which I think is pretty special. I also have a really, really nice copy of B.B. King's Midnight Believer. The key track on here, if you want to sample, is Never Make a Move Too Soon. Love it. Co-written by with Joe Sample and Will Jennings, and it's really quite sly and honky, and made its way onto quite a few kind of late night FM playlists. Going one of B.B. King's better crossover tracks. This album in general is more R&B and more kind of mellow than some of his others, but I'm a big fan. And finally, I have one other soundtrack in this genre list, and it is this. It is the soundtrack to Blade Runner. Vangelis. This is the orchestral recording of the original Vangelis soundtrack, performed by the New American Orchestra. So where you've got the kind of sharp synths, you've got strings and brass and woodwinds, kind of like an old style Hollywood lens shining on a bright new kind of futuristic world, which I think is kind of part of the story of the movie as well. Kind of a bit of a split reviews. I read some of the contemporary reviews. Some really liked its kind of craftsmanship and its accessibility, but others kind of missed the eeriness, I guess, of the Vangelis work. I think it's really interesting. If you're a Blade Runner fan, then this is just something you need to have, really, and it's not that expensive, and it sounds really, really good. All right, that is the genre list. This price list will go out Wednesday, 9 p.m. Sydney time. If you would like to be on the price list, drop me an email at shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. If you have any stories on any of these records, if you're a William Friedkin fan, if you can talk to me about how much you love Blue Train, I love all this. I don't get many comments. I guess I'm pleading for more. All right, thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed that. And as I said, the next list is an unusual variant, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. Bye.